So you think you have a B, Levine, you think you have a son that went to Cowansville. My daughter going into to Beaver Valley, Ontario. Could you believe?
Hey. So what time are we starting? I'm just
we're starting in right now, basically.
Oh, 7:37. Okay.
Jewish time, B. Don't get excited.
Great.
Do you have all your cities lined up for the whole time?
No. It's not easy. I want to tell you, we're talking generally to shluchim, to emissaries, and they're very busy. So it's not easy to get, and especially to get a couple together. It's not always easy.
You know, I was going to suggest, what about Stiefel's son in Slovakia?
We'd love to talk. We'd love to do it. It's a good idea.
Oh, I'm in touch with him always. I help him out
good.
there.
And I know, tell him that we're doing this, and we give me his number, and we'll arrange it.
Oh, it's so interesting because
I know, 100%.
It's Slovakia, and he's right near my hometown where I was born. So it's very interesting. Why? I'll tell you why. Because he has a lot of Jewish kids like coming from Israel because they have a famous veterinary school.
Exactly.
So the boys come and the girls come, and he makes every yontif, he makes parties and everything. And
I know.
And he invites them to come with bring their friends and everything.
Yeah.
Anyways, they bring non-Jews. That's what happens.
Yeah, unfortunately.
He's trying to avoid that.
No, he's doing incredible work, and that's what we try to do. But
so Zed,
good, beautiful. We're just gonna mute everyone so it's no background noise. And I want to welcome everyone tonight to our journey around the Jewish world. I can't even remember all the countries we spoke to, the cities, the rabbis representing the communities, the rebbitzins. It's incredible how many places we visited, and each place is unique, and each place has its story, and each place in one way or another today has a certain vibrancy, even though it may not have had ever in the past, or like Dubai, or it may have had a much larger one, but now there's a bit of a revival, or trying to keep strong what was, or building up something that was small to bigger. So we never did Israel yet. There's always a challenge with us doing countries, cities that are in that zone of the world, Europe, Asia, or Israel, Europe and Israel and Africa, because our time difference. So sometimes we're lucky that the couple or the husband is willing to be up in the middle of the night, 2 a.m, and be with us. Not always, exactly, and we talk and we get a chance to, but it's not always are we so lucky, but sometimes what's more important to hear. So when we were planning, I wanted to do before we come to the holiday of Shavuos, which is the holiday of the giving of the Torah, connected to the beginning of the Jewish people. Israel is connected to the beginning of the Jewish people. And after we had the Miron tragedy, I wanted to definitely touch base with someone in Israel and hear for something in Israel. And in Israel alone, it's a big country, but there are many cities. And there's one city that's long and alone and forgotten. And that's Hebron. To the average Israeli, Hebron could be Timbuktu. The average Israeli never stepped into the city of Hebron, thinks that it's a place that a Jew should never be there. It's an Arab place, having no idea that Hebron is actually the birthplace of the Jewish people. This is where Abraham and Sarah lived. This is where Abraham buried his wife Sarah. This is where Isaac and Rivka lived. This is where Jacob spent many years. Hebron has been the place where Judaism was born, where the whole concept of Judaism, a people that will dedicate themselves to God and become this nation, this is where it all happened. So Hebron is a very, very special city. Whenever I go to Israel, we go to Israel, we always go to Hebron. Every trip I take with people, we go to Hebron. We've had to schlep people and convince them, Israelis specifically, to come to Hebron, and it was an eye-opener. Hebron is a very important city. And this is all before anything happened. The terrible things that are going on the last few days, I don't know what the right word is, terror, war, anarchy, there's no words to describe. I watch videos of projectiles. It's like a Disney show of lights, and you think it's like a fireworks show. And these are all missiles that were shot, aimed at hitting and hurting and killing civilians, Jewish people. Unfortunately, they have. In Ashkelon today, it hit directly. It killed a little boy in Sderot. I mean, it's incredible what's going on and what they're living through now. And who knows, as we're talking, what's happening. So the fact that we chose Hebron and Israel this time is all divine providence. It's the time for us to focus on Israel. So I want to first start, and we're going to say a prayer. We're going to say the prayer we say for all those, for the protection of our brothers and sisters in Israel, for all those who have been wounded, and many have been wounded, to have a fast recovery. Obviously, all those still from Iran who need a recovery. So say chapter 20 of Psalms together. We'll read it out loud slowly, and please say it along with me. It's on the screen. Lam Natseach Mizmor LeDavid Yancha Adonai Biyom Tzara Yisagevcha Shem Elohei Yaakov. May God answer you in a difficult time. Yishlach Ezracha Mikodesh. He will send his salvation, his help from holy, from above. Mitzion Yisadeka. Yiskar Kol Minchasecha Va'alascha Yedashna Sela. Yiten L'chal Chilvavecha L'chal Atzascha Yimaleh. May God grant our heart's desire and fulfill all of our counsel. Biranana Bishuasecha Ub'Shem Eloheinu Nidgol Yimaleh Adonai Kol Mishalosecha. Ata Yodati Yoshia Adonai Mishicho Yaneu Mishmei Kadsho Mikburos Yesha Yemino Eile Varechev Eile Basusim Vanachnu B'Shem Adonai Eloheinu Naskir Hema Karu V'Nafalu Vanachnu Kamnu Vanisoidod Adonai Hoshia Hamelech Yanenu B'Yom Kareinu. So may Hashem help that He listened to our prayers tonight and the prayers of Jews around the world. And especially as we're going to talk about Hebron, one of the people that were killed with the anti-tank missile that was shot at the Jeep was an Israeli soldier. His name was Staff Sergeant Omer Tabib, was killed at the Gaza border. He actually was a soldier, like many, and we'll hear very soon, who spent time in Hebron, became a very dear friend of Chabad in Hebron. And beautiful pictures of him wearing tefillin and being involved, connected with Chabad, and a dear friend of Chabad who was lost, and an Israeli soldier protecting the Holy Land, one of the tragedies in this current war that we are in. So, as we said before, that we are, we wanted to have Israel for technical reasons of travel and other things going on. We pre-recorded, but thank God we pre-recorded, because in this situation we would never been able to have a live event happening with what's going on in Israel, and everywhere people are running between their house and shelters, et cetera, et cetera. So we're going to put on the conversation we had, fascinating conversation. Then afterwards, we'll have a discussion about the Hebron. We'll have a conversation about the Hebron if you have any questions. Hold on one moment, one moment. We're just getting. Okay, we're gonna get ourselves on now, because I think it was paused or something.
No,
Hello, hello. We
hello, Shalom Aleichem.
we welcome you, Rabbi Danny Cohen from Hebron, the Holy Land of Israel. It's so nice to see you again. It's been a little while since we've been in Israel and seen you in your hometown of Hebron. It's very special to talk to someone in Israel now as well, especially as Israel is
Right.
at the top of everyone's mind after the terrible tragedy that happened in the city of Meron, Mount Meron. We just finished the Shiva. The 45 families just finished their Shiva. So this is, and next week is coming up, special days of Yom Yerushalayim, Jerusalem Day, and Hebron Day, which we'll hear about, I'm sure, a little later. So it's very special to be talking to you. And at first, I welcome you on our journey around the Jewish world, which we've been spending months really traveling and meeting beautiful
Thank you.
Jewish life in different cities and countries. Here we're talking to Israel, but within Israel, Hebron is unknown to many
Where you
people.
get
Hebron's unknown to many people. So that's why I think it's very beautiful to be able to hear from you about yourself and life in Hebron for you and your work that you're doing there and for the community in Hebron. So maybe start first, maybe start telling us about yourself. How many years, where are you from? How did you end up in Hebron? How many years are you living in Hebron? You with your wife, Batsheva.
okay. I'll give you my background in a nutshell. So, basically, me and my wife grew up. Our families from the United States. Um, my no, my parents and I, and my little brother, made Aliyah, moved to Israel, 1978, when I was 6 years old, from little Jerusalem of New York, from Brooklyn, and I grew up. I grew up basically in a place that I would say, quote unquote, as crazy as Hebron. I grew up in a community that is, the world likes to term it as a settlement, and sometimes use that word as a derogatory remark. We know that to settle the land is a positive commandment. So, in any event, I grew up in a settlement called the Psagot. Psagot today is known to be is famous because of a fancy and very decorated wine, winery. When I was growing up, there was famous because of the first Intifada. It was famous for the wrong reasons. For us, for instance, as children, traveling to school every day, getting pelted with rocks, sometimes Molotov cocktails. Hebron, Psagot is kind of right on the outskirts. When I say outskirts, I'm talking about 100 meters away from the city of Ramallah. And so, you could understand that moving to Hebron later on wasn't that big of a shock like it would have been to other people. When we moved there to Psagot, in 1982. Basically, we were family number 25. Today, thank God, there's like 300 families there, and it's the what's called the, in Israel in particular. I mean, the Jewish world in general is very into labels, right? You're secular, reform, conservative, this kind of Jew, that kind of Jew. In Israel, it's even worse. And so in any event, both me, my wife, and in the community of Psagot is the label is the Kippah Sruga, national, religious, very Zionist families, very ideological. Um, just to give a picture, that every single family that I know, any child that's in the age of recruiting to the army, especially nowadays, but even back then when I was going into the army, 1991, you serve in a combat unit not because you're forced to, but because you're volunteer. If somebody really does not want to be in an infantry or any, combat unit or any a position in the army that would be one of danger, they don't force you. They need motivated soldiers. And every single family that the children are going into the army, till this day, everybody is striving to the highest that they can in terms of the more, the more dangerous or the more self-sacrifice, the better. Many officers, commando units, and stuff like that. And so basically, that's the environment that I grew up in. Also, Batsheva, my wife, and grew up in the Golan Heights in Ramat Makshimim, where her family was really from the pioneering group that after the Six-Day War moved to the Golan Heights, and during the Yom Kippur War, actually were evacuated from their moshav, because it's like a mile away from the border, and that place got hot for a few hours. Actually, the Syrian commando conquered the little town. Thank God they left since then. And we both grew up in that that atmosphere. When I was 15, 16, I was in the high school, the yeshiva, and an older friend that was a Lubavitcher. And, he got me hooked on to Chabad, the Rebbe. I grew up Orthodox. And, like many others that grew up that putting on tefillin, keeping Shabbos, any thing that has to do with Torah observance is done sometimes in a very routine way. You just don't know anything else. That's how you grew up. And as a teenager, I must admit, it wasn't always that appealing and exciting to me. For me, when I was introduced to Chabad, it was a great revelation that to meet a group of people that are actually excited about what they do in terms of spirituality and Torah and mitzvahs. And when this friend of mine, Zev, in 1990, went for a year to learn in the yeshiva in the courtyard of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, 770 Eastern Parkway, I kind of came to visit him, thinking that this would be like a social experience, a folklore, something to add a bit of ingredients to a bit of taste to a spiritual life. Little did I know that visit would have a very, very strong impact on my life, because really since then, life has not been the same. It took many years, over a decade, till it actually sunk in. Me and my wife became card-carrying members of Chabad and joining the Rebbe's army, the ranks. I came back to Israel after this visit in 1990 and was in the army for 3 years in a combat unit in Givati. My wife Batsheva that will join us in a minute and served as a Sherut Leumi national service for 2 years. When we met, it was kind of, we started together a journey towards, becoming part of the Rebbe's army. And here we are in downtown Hebron.
So that's incredible. Incredible growing up with such a love for Israel and then coming to the frontier called Hebron. So how many years are you living in Hebron and serving as shluchim of the Rebbe and sort of what was there before you moved there, and what have you and Batsheva, what have you become there for the community in Hebron?
Okay, so we're here since the summer of 2002, almost 20 years. Kind of amazing. When we moved here, unfortunately, that situation really stayed the same, where you have more or less only 65 Jewish families living in Hebron, in the biblical area of the city, in Kiryat Arba, which is our neighboring suburb. There's 8,000 people living there, 8,000 Jews, but in Hebron, in the areas where Jews have been living for thousands of years, there's only close to 70 families. That's not because there's not enough Meshuganas that want to come and live in Hebron. It's actually a long waiting list, but without getting into the whole political discussion, due to the fact that, all over Judea and Samaria, there's a freeze on building and development. Hebron is the worst in terms of that. It's really if there's 1 square mile in the whole Israel that is a symbol, of the whole Arab-Israeli conflict that's been going on for 100 years, that's where we are. In 1 square mile, you have every ingredient that's part of the Arab-Israeli conflict. You also have, in 1 square mile, every ingredient that will make a Jew, touched and inspired, whether it's the history, the fact that our children, despite the challenges of being in a place like Hebron, grew up walking in the same streets and sidewalks as our fathers and mothers and Jews that were here throughout the ages. The soldiers are a tremendous inspiration to meet these young Israelis. Not all of them are tremendously knowledgeable in Judaism, for instance, the Torah commandments regarding the Jewish connection to the land of Israel, but yet standing and guarding with self-sacrifice. Some people are inspired just from visiting in homes of people that live in Hebron, to see normal people, normal situation inside the houses, living in the same properties and houses that Jews have been living really from the days of King David, with the only interruption of the pogrom in 1929. And all in all, it's a very exciting place to be. To answer, what was here before, so there was a Chabad presence, and there still is a large one in Kiryat Arba, the neighboring town. Just to throw he and his wife were part of that.
Danny, you froze for a minute. After you said that there was a large presence in Kiryat Arba, you froze. I don't know if we missed anything.
Okay, so the family I mentioned that the Nachshon family, Baruch and Sarah Nachshon. Baruch was it still is, a famous Hasidic artist that he and his wife were part of the pioneering group that moved to Hebron after the Six-Day War with the blessing of the Rebbe. But here in Hebron, there really wasn't a Chabad presence. Um, as a result, Hebron was the capital, really, of the Chabad movement in the land of Israel. Obviously, every inch of the land is dear and holy, but all the Chabad rebbes, all the Chabad leaders focused and put a very big emphasis on Hebron in terms of investing, moving, building up the city, not only spiritually but also physically. And we have the privilege, our shul, is mamish. It's the first Chabad piece of real estate of land that was bought by the second Lubavitcher Rebbe. You have here
And this is
quite
in
a
the
few.
1800s, right?
So,
This is in the early 1800s, right? When was
that's right, 1823. Yes, and it is amazing. It is amazing to live, to caretake, have the privilege of being the caretakers of these spots, the Chabad cemetery, where there's hundreds of Hasidim that are buried there throughout the ages. So they're very, very special people. So I'll just end off this long answer that since we came, we really tried, with God's help, to um, renovate and caretake for all these historic spots. For instance, opening up a kollel, a little learning center right up where the Chabad cemetery is. Um, different places, but our main focus is, and what we enjoy the most, I mean, this year of Corona has not been easy for that, but our main focus is to reach out to the many thousands of soldiers that come through Hebron on an annual basis. Every 4 or 5 months, there's a rotation here of a unit, 500, 600 men and women, young, brave, holy Jews. That our job is, what we try to do is to make sure that when they leave the city, they leave not only with a military experience, but also one of connection.
so you mentioned
I'm just introducing. My wife just walked in, Bathsheba.
hello, Batsheva. It's nice to see you on Zoom, both of you on Zoom, and it brings back all the memories of how many times we were in your house. And I want to tell you, the Cohens have a famous porch. It's not a porch anymore. It's a full room where the soldiers come to eat Shabbos. Many beautiful things happen there, and they've welcomed us very well with many of the groups that we have brought to Israel. We always make a point to come to Hebron.
That's right, you do.
A big part of it is meeting the Cohens, who came after many other Jews came, but they've become one of the strong forces in Hebron, both for the soldiers, we'll get more into it soon, but as well as the community as well, and all the holy sites that are connected to there. So first I want to thank you very much for giving the time. I know you're very busy, even during COVID, there's a lot going on for you, but it's very, very special to be able to have you and to have our community, meet you and hear a little bit more about the life in that part of the world. Unfortunately, for many people, Hebron is not a place you visit. I remember the first time we took a group to Hebron and we had an Israeli woman with us, and her whole family in Israel was telling her, "Are you crazy? You don't go to Hebron.
Yeah.
This is in the West Bank. This is the part that Jews don't go to." And we told her, "This is the birthplace of Judaism. How can you not go there? We have to go there." And she ended up coming with us, and it was the most incredible experience for her, and it broke the ice for many of her relatives eventually coming to Hebron. to visit. So we know Hebron is about takes a lot of pioneering spirit, which both of you have very, very much. And let's talk a moment about the soldiers. So Hebron obviously is, like you said, a small enclave amidst of a big Arab city, a very fundamentalist Arab city, and there are many soldiers to protect the Jewish community there and to protect Israel in general. So tell us a little bit about your work with the soldiers, because we've seen firsthand some of it, and we've actually been to several bases where soldiers you serve, and we see the love that they have for you and the respect. Many of them are very secular, but they really appreciate and connect with you and those who help you. So maybe tell us a little bit more about the work that happens with soldiers on a regular basis.
Okay, so Baruch Hashem, we've managed to go back to the army bases, and I give classes in various different army bases. And when I give the class, I usually give it to the female soldiers that are watching over the area. So they sit in front of screens and watch the entire area. But whoever is not on duty is allowed, and whoever's on duty is not allowed to move her face from the screen. And whoever is off duty is able to sit facing me. So while I give the class, half of the audience is sitting with their back to me because they're on duty.
So what they do?
Because they look at the cameras in the city, and the other half is sitting in a half circle around me. And every week, it's usually a class about the Jewish date of the week or the Parsha of the week. So last week, I obviously taught about Lag BaOmer and about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and Meron. And I taught it in 5 army bases. And this week, when I came to give a class in one of the army bases, a girl turned to me and she said, you know, I have to tell you honestly, I didn't know anything about Lag BaOmer. I didn't know anything about Rabbi Shimon. And after the whole tragedy happened in Meron, my family started talking about it. And I started saying, and they were amazed, how do you know all these things about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai? How do you know all these things about the whole Lag BaOmer thing? And it's really beautiful to see that you're able to make a difference. Another thing that I started also during Corona is to give fresh hot challah. I usually go there like an hour before Shabbos to the army bases. And there's nothing that beats homemade challah. And so that they like. Next week, you might all join us because we're doing a whole milchig dairy events for all the different army groups in our house. So that's one thing that you don't want to miss if you happen to be here. And we try to make them feel at home, far away from home, and give them a feeling of, you're not with your father or mother, but you're with the biblical father or mother.
Wow.
Yeah, I'll add something. I mean, I'd like to hear something special about the person of Batsheva mentioned. The Rebbe says something very beautiful about Hebron, that, despite the fact that Hebron many times is looked upon as a place of conflict nowadays, being smack in the middle of the whole Arab-Israeli conflict. And yet the Rebbe says that if there's one place in the world that symbolizes the most about Jewish unity, it's Hebron, because we talk a lot about every Jew is the same, and we're all the same, and we're all brothers and sisters, and there's no difference. But you put a few Jews in one room, and we're very different. Even if we're from the same community. But the one thing that every single Jew shares that we all have in common is that we all have the same parents. And we all have the same right of Maot, and therefore this place is really a place of unity.
And you definitely, both of you definitely play a very big role in bringing that sense of unity, secular, religious. You know, a lot of the soldiers, like you say, come from very secular homes, kibbutzim and other homes, and very secular places, but yet they come and they feel connected to Am Yisrael, to all the Jewish people as one, and they can relate to everyone. I just remember every time we go somewhere and you're there, they never went to the police base and you know the army police, and then the army. It was incredible, the tremendous you know good feeling and love that they had for both of you, and appreciation for a whole new dimension of their Judaism, which is a real frontier, which there's no question that the more they feel connected, the more that they have a success in the keeping everyone safe there, and for the whole Israel. It's really the border is not just for Hebron, it's really keeping the whole Eretz Yisrael, the whole Israel safe. But as well, there's a lot that there's the city of Hebron. So you said today, how many families are there? There's still, how many families live where in Hebron itself, where you live?
About 70. About 70.
About 70 families. I want to tell you, you know, it's fascinating for those who are not there. Hebron is an old city, but the place, the little square mile you talk about is really beautiful. It's, you walk in there, you're walking in any type of suburb, beautiful houses, small apartments, but very, very nicely kept. And it's full of, it's vibrant, it's alive, children running around. Tell us about life in Hebron for families. And you yourself, we saw before your some of your children. I'm sure maybe we'll see them soon. But what's life Hebron for families, for children? Do people live there in fear? Do people live a very normal life where all the regular activities and kids are outside playing and things are happening? What is life like in the city?
Okay, so I'll start and then no, I'll start and then hand over the floor to Batsheva. So yeah, you know that's really a question that we get quite often because you know anybody that visits here, you know nobody can ignore the feeling of holiness, of you know the history, you know what a special place this is. But on the other side, very strong military presence, soldiers on the streets, not something that you see in the streets of Montreal or anywhere else in Israel. And definitely living here as it's security challenges and different things that people elsewhere do not have to deal with. However, the reward and return of bringing up your children on the same streets that Jews have been walking on for 4,000 years. You know, in every other city in Israel, we know that there were exiles, there were places that were totally abandoned. According to the history books, Hebron is probably the only place that there's a continuous Jewish presence, really from the days of King David till the pogrom in 1929. So to be able to bring up our children here is something very, very special. You know, again, due to the fact that we are living in a area that has its challenges, and unfortunately, we are very, very restricted in terms of development here in the city. You know, while you know, you'll come here and go up one of the hills, and you see around you the tremendous development that the Arab community are involved in. And on the Jewish side, close to zero because of the restrictions on building and development. It's not easy. It's heartbreaking. But let's put that aside. So just because of that, just the challenges, the situation, the children here are offered a lot of, above average in terms of the amount of activities and, after school programs. So, I mean, here's Menucha Rachel.
Hello.
We have five boys and a girl. And, when people call up and ask, hello, Rabbi Cohen, is it safe to come visit in Hebron today? So I always hand over the phone to Menucha that you should answer that question.
So Menucha, you want to tell us something about why you're so proud to live in Hebron?
I'm so proud to live in Hebron because, like, it is right next to my father's and my mother's, and like when you have bitachon, like you can't, like you can walk and not be afraid from nothing, and nice to live here.
She's a tough girl.
Wow. She carries the name, like Rabbi Cohen said, she carries the name of the second Rebbe's daughter, who's buried. She was the main force in Hebron. Maybe you want to talk a minute. I think it's so beautiful to hear. In the early 1800s, a Jewish woman, a great, very righteous woman, was the main force of building the Chabad community in Hebron. I think it's something nice, maybe.
That's right. Yes. Menucha, sit down. So I'll talk about this because this is really directly connected to her. So, you know that in the Hasidic communities, the usually the Rebbetzin is famous and is a great name due to the fact that she's the wife of the Rebbe or the daughter of the Rebbe. Rebbetzin Menucha Rachel that lives in Hebron between the years 1845 until she passed away in 1888 was, as she was like almost a Rebbe on her own. People would come to Hebron to pray at the Machpelah and make a stop. Would make a stop and visit by Rebbetzin Menucha Rachel and receive her blessing. Yeah.
It's nice, like I named after Menucha Rachel, and she live here, and she's here up there. Yeah, I'm the first one in
she was really the pillar of the community. There's a famous, it's known that at a very early age, she developed this urge to move to the Holy Land, Eretz Israel. At one point, shortly after she got married, she became very, very sick. She was actually in a life-threatening situation. And after her father, only after her father came and whispered on her ear. Her father was Rabbi Dov Ber, the Mittler Rebbe, the second Rebbe of Chabad. Only after he whispered in her ear, "Don't worry, you're going to go to Eretz Israel." That's when she opened her eyes and started to become healthy. Many, many stories about her righteousness, and today, throughout the world, there's really many, many hundreds, if not thousands of girls that are named Menucha Rachel after her. But this kid over here, Menucha Rachel, is really the first one to carry her name in Hebron, living in Hebron prior to the, post the 1929 pogrom.
Wow, wow. You know, and I remember, I want to make a little point to tell everyone that the cemetery where she's buried, where you have your kollel next to it, is you have to travel up a hill, past even some Arab homes. But it's incredible how you see from her gravesite, given usually to great people with the whole thing around it. It's very something that's very, very special. And we actually took when one of our trips to Hebron, we got a stone which is the cornerstone of our Chabad house from the city of
That's
the
right.
place of Judaism, which is very, very special. Um, so you mentioned that there are only about 70 families. It's hard to get in. How does someone get it? How does someone end up moving into Hebron? Like, how long does someone wait? How long does it take if someone ends up coming to Hebron? I know it's very limited. There's a lot of issues there. But you know, for the 70 families living there, how did they end up in Hebron? Like, how long was the wait when you wanted to move to Hebron, or someone now? Is it?
Okay, so it's very interesting. It says in the Medrash that there's three places in the land of Israel that the nations of the world, that the nations of the world have no way to dispute our claim to the land because it was paid for. The Hebron, the cave of the patriarchs, the Temple Mount, and the tomb of Joseph in Shechem, Kever Yosef. And ask anybody that's a little bit knowledgeable in Arab-Israeli conflict and politics, and ask anybody to name the three places that are the most controversial, the most questioned. These are Kever Yosef, Har HaBayit, and Marat al-Machpelah. So, like I said, there's many, many restrictions. There's only 70 families here. And in order to move here, you have to get on our list. There's a committee here from the community that will, interview the candidates and decide if you're appropriate. I guess if you have what it takes to live in a place like Hebron, and then you're actually waiting for either a family to move that rarely happens, or a old property, because wherever we're living here, I'm going to step outside in a moment just to give you a little bit of a glimpse, but we live in properties and in homes that and in areas that Jews have been living for thousands of years. Our neighborhood, the Avram Avinu neighborhood, there's documented history that goes back close to 1,000 years, and way before that Jews have been living here. Just how do people move here. So I'll just share with you, when the idea was brought up by Baruch Marzel. Baruch Marzel is one of the pioneers of Hebron that was instrumental of the Jewish return here post the Six-Day War, late 70s, early 80s. If you Google his name, he kind of has painted as an extreme zealot. I was just say he's the cutest extreme Jew out there, very dedicated, very definitely passionate on. And the history of Hebron and the fact that you have, he told me, you have under your belt 3 years of service in a combat unit in the IDF. You should be in a place, your shlichus should be in a place where there's so many soldiers that you could relate to. And, a lot of conversations. Basically, at one point, I told him, Baruch, you got me convinced. But there's 2 problems. One, my wife is never going to agree. We used to live in Kiryat Arba. She would never walk down here. And I told him, and second of all, there's no room. He said, listen, Danny, I can't help you with your wife. You're gonna have to deal with that on your own. But Sheva just had to run out. But if you convince her, I will find you a spot. She claims to this day that she agreed just because she knew that he's not going to find a place. So why start an argument for nothing? And here we are ever since.
Before you go, take us outside. So now is celebration of Yom Yerushalayim, and many people are unaware that the day after Yom Yerushalayim on Tuesday is Yom Hebron, is when Hebron was redeemed. Maybe you want to tell us a little bit about that, because many people don't know. Like you said, the Jewish community lived there till 1929, a very sizable and a very well established, and the British kicked them out after the pogroms, which many people were killed in Hebron. They kicked out the rest of the Jewish community, and they weren't able to come back till after 1967, and that wasn't easy as well. So tell us a little bit about the Hebron being redeemed, the holy city of Hebron.
Okay, so first of all, it was always challenging to live here. Even throughout history, the financial hardships, living conditions, issues with the neighbors. Nobody ever chose to live here because they got a great deal on some mansion. It was always because of a strong connection to our fathers and mothers. But when I hear, and I'll allow yourself, because I'll allow myself, excuse me, to mention this, because we really don't view this as politics. This is our Torah, our life, Jewish life in Hebron. When I hear many times from people that, yes, it's ours historically, but if only Israel would give away the areas that were liberated after the 6-Day War, that's the only problem. That's what's fueling the Arab-Israeli conflict. If you would leave the occupied territories, as they call it, everything would be fine. And when I hear that, I ask, in that case, excuse
You're muted. You're muted.
I wonder why in 1920, when you had a situation that
You're muted. You're muted again.
there's 1,500, there's no Israeli flag, there's no Israeli army, there's no settlers, there's no Israel. You had 1,500 Jews here living the way Jews lived in the shtetl, learning Torah and trying to make a living and just being here because of the holiness of the place. And yet, in one weekend, after many years of more or less coexistence, in one weekend when there was incitement by the Mufti of Jerusalem that the Jews are conquering or have intention to take over the Temple Mount. It's amazing how many times that excuse was used for attacks on Jews and pogroms. But after one weekend of incitement, the Arabs of Hebron gathered. 69 Jews were brutally murdered, hundreds were wounded, and the rest were sent away by the British police to thinking they'd never come back again. But as we know, they came back. Chabad said they came back 1967, the third day or the second day, excuse me, of the 6-Day War. You would expect that a city that has such a history of, tragic bloodbath. And I'm going to give the camera to Menucha. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So a place that has such a history, you would expect that the conquering of the city, the liberation of the city would have been, a real serious battle with, God forbid, many, many people wounded. And the truth is that Hebron was taken over, was liberated without even one shot being fired. And we are just yesterday we celebrated the Yom Hebron, the day that Hebron was liberated. So I'll mention the story. 1967, the chief rabbi of the IDF was Rabbi Shlomo Goren. Besides really being a giant, he was
We don't hear you well. 1 second. Rabbi Danny,
pictures
we
of
don't hear you well a second.
Oh,
Oh, yeah. Okay,
okay.
now. You started to
Let
say
me come.
1967, yeah.
תסובבי את זה אליי, סובבי את זה אליי. אני אחזיק. Okay, is better?
Yeah.
Okay, so he was a fighting kind of rabbi. There's a lot of pictures of him coming out of a helicopter holding a Torah and in different situations. He heard, after the very emotional visit at the Kotel, famous pictures of crying with the paratroopers at the Kotel. He hears that the next destination is Hebron, and he tells the commander of the Central Command, Aluf Pikuda Merkaz, he tells him, I want to be there when we go into Hebron. I want to be there when, for the first time in 700 years, for 700 years, the Muslims did not allow Jews to enter the resting place of our fathers and mothers. He says, I want to be there. So there's no problem. And he gives him the information where they should meet at 1800 hours, in army language. And basically, either Rabbi Goring got it wrong or plans were changed. And he comes with his driver to the meeting point. There's nobody there, no jeeps, no army, no tanks. He figures out that they left without him. And he tells his driver, go. He knows the direction as the map. And as they're approaching Hebron and coming down the windy road to towards Me'arat HaMachpelah, he notices that it's very quiet. And he realizes that he made a mistake. The IDF did not arrive here. They probably pushed off the maneuver. And here he is, the mighty IDF. And it's only him and his driver, not really the highest elite commando trained team. And okay, Rabbi Goren was not the kind of person to just back off. And he goes, he notices as they continue, he notices the cave of Machpelah. And very emotionally, he comes with his driver. They try to open up the gates, the heavy doors. It's locked. And he takes out his Uzi, like in some movie, shoots up the lock. And till this day, there's actually a dent where you can see where his bullets hit. And he walks into Me'arat HaMachpelah. I can imagine how he felt after 700 years. He's the first child to visit by his fathers and mothers. And he's staying there, he's davening. And in walk a delegation of Arab leaders, the mayor, the mufti, the chief Muslim authority, and other few dignitaries. And they have a letter of surrender. And they read it out. One of the locals translated it into Hebrew. And basically, they're saying we recognize that the IDF have taken over. They were a little shocked that the mighty IDF is this rabbi and his driver, but they surrendered. But they say we demand our religious rights and that we should be allowed to have free access into the cave of Machpelah. And Rabbi Goren hears this and he gets red in the face. And he says, what a chutzpah. For 700 years, you kept us out in the rain. You kept us out in disgrace. We weren't allowed. And you're telling us that you're demanding anything. Whatever we decide to give you, you'll say thank you. Now leave. and they left. And he ripped up that letter. And that could have been the case till this day, but without getting into that, but basically, once the real IDF came, and the defense minister Moshe Dayan hears, "Oh my God, Rabbi Goren, what did you do? The whole world is going to fight us," and he canceled that order. And unfortunately, he canceled this order, and um, the keys to the Machpelah were handed over to the Muslim authorities. And to this day, I mean, you come and thank God the security is in the hands of Israel, but in terms of really anything, any development, any changes, anything, it's really up to them to say yes or no.
Unbelievable.
And that's the story of the liberation of Hebron.
That's an incredible, incredible story. So I see you walking outside, and maybe this is a good way sort of end our
I'm
interesting
walking
conversation. You want to show us some things.
Yeah.
You're walking to the Machpelah. You're walking to the unbelievable. Imagine living, I'm talking to our people, imagine living a few steps away from the birthplace, in the birthplace of Judaism, where Abraham settled and where they're buried, the three patriarchs and matriarchs. It's a few steps away. It's incredible. I go to Israel, I feel such an honor to be able to go daven there and pray there and bring people there. And we put on tefillin there and we do our prayers. And here to live a few steps away, and we can daven there Shabbos and any day you want. It's unbelievable.
It's true. It's the birthplace of the connection between the people of Israel and the land of Israel, the first recorded real estate transaction in the history of mankind, in the Torah. Here we are.
You froze.
Very okay is that you have many old buildings around the world, but this is probably one of the only buildings that are uh, remained in the same situation that it was built 2,000 years ago, has been being used for thousands of years for prayer and thousands of people daily, and it's stayed in the same situation that it was.
Wow. Rabbi Danny, you were freezing up a little there, but just tell us where you are now.
Okay, I walked into the local pizza store that as well, not as we're talking, because the workers went to finish the day, but we're in the middle of developing this whole building. It's the only Jewish property on the field of Machpelah, and Baruch Hashem, we're in the middle of redoing, basically stripping this whole building inside and out, totally. And when you and your community come to visit next time, you'll see a beautiful Chabad Machpelah Welcome Center right here. I just walked into the building site. Look how close it is to the Machpelah.
And I want to actually say we've been welcomed by you. We've been to the center when it as it is now, I guess, or before you start to strip it, at the renovations, and you and your people work for your wife and Bachev and the people work for your kids. Tremendous welcome and been able to help people really connect to, and to also be part of helping the soldiers. Every time we go, we've supplied food, and I know you have a program where you do pizza for soldiers and other things for soldiers. It's incredible what's going on and the type of work you're doing, which anyone can go on to Chabad Hebron and see all the great work that's happening, and even take part in helping keep the first frontier of Jewish life, the first city of Jewish life. And actually, my son, Mati, my youngest son, is here with me now. And God willing, his bar mitzvah is next summer. We hope to be in Israel for the bar mitzvah. We'll definitely hope we'll be there with you as well. Before then, we'll be with some groups as well.
Amen.
So it's really, really, really special to be able to have, spent the time to learn a little bit about the first Jewish settlement and how it's, though it's very small and not because of the desire of the people living there, it's very strong and vibrant, welcoming so many people. I encourage everyone, go visit Hebron. You can't make a trip to Israel not to visit Hebron. You can do it safely. We've taken a bulletproof bus if you want.
That's right.
And there are many ways to get there, and it's never been a problem. We've taken cars.
And don't listen to anybody. Don't tell you this place is dangerous. First
It's
check
not,
with
it's
us,
not.
and I'll
I'm
put
just
you
saying,
on the phone.
even if people want to feel that extra safety, but we've gone there with cars and vans and always make our way there, and it's really special to come to Hebron and pass by Kiryat Arba, which is very close.
Yeah, one second. חבר'ה, יש פה שידור חי ליהודים בקנדה, במונטריאול. Look at these.
This is a group of our soldiers protecting our holy land. The Cohens they work with. Beautiful.
Yes, this is our community. Everybody's wearing green.
Yeah, beautiful. And your sons as well. Your son just entered the army. Is that correct?
Yeah, our number 3 Yossi is in Golani Brigade, and my oldest, 23 years old, is the officer in the paratroopers.
Incredible. Protecting the land physically and spiritually. That's beautiful. Yes. Very, very good. Beautiful. Rabbi Danny, I know you're busy, and we really, really appreciate being able to hear from you and your great work and your passion. And Hashem should give you lots of hatzlacha, lots of success with your wife, Batsheva, and to fulfill all your dreams, to be able to bring more and more people to visit our parents, the matriarchs and the patriarchs, and find the greatest blessings.
Yes, and hopefully very soon we will greet you here with Mashiach. It says that one of his first stops is to awaken our fathers and mothers of Hebron. So maybe tonight.
God willing. God willing. So thank you so much, and all the best.
L'chaim. Take care.
We see each other soon, L'chaim. Be well, thanks. Bye-bye. Okay. Hebron is a lot of connection to God. Maybe not as good a connection an internet and as we have in Montreal, but we it was a very special conversation, and I hope you were able to get it. And I don't know if anyone has any questions. Hebron is in our hearts, in our minds. It's engraved. We've been there many times. We've been standing at the precipice of the Arab area. We were able to see inside the mall where they are. I mean, we've been all around over there. We've been in the army bases in the city. So anyways, if anyone has any question, I hope that you walk away and know that next time you're in Israel, Hebron is a small city, but has a big place in the history and our story of Judaism. And it's really a must. Whoever goes to Israel, you must go to Hebron. This is not going to Hebron is not visiting your parents when you're in town. And this is really what it very much is. And to see vibrancy and to see a kid, besides an older couple, a kid who feels so good about living in such a holy place, though it's not as easy. And I want to tell you, unfortunately, Hebron is more safe today than Lod.
Voilà, elle a dit maintenant, Hebron, c'est plus sécuritaire que l'autre, que l'aéroport.
But
Parce que
this
c'est
is
petit et il y a toute
unfortunately
l'armée autour.
this is unfortunately the story, but it's all our homes. If anyone has any questions or comments, please unmute yourself. Rabbi Danny's not on with us, but we'll try to to answer or talk about it. I think it's something very special.
And we've been there enough times that we probably know about it.
Just
Rabbi
say your
Moshe.
name. Yes.
Morty Berkovich.
Yes, Morty.
Yes,
I
Morty.
visited Hebron 2 times on my JLI trips. I met Danny, and he's just an absolute wonderful guy. You know, it was a pleasure meeting him. We met the soldiers there and everything. Hebron is fantastic. I really, really enjoyed it. You know, and I don't believe that he would have recognized me because I'm one of thousands and he's one. He's Danny Cohen, you know, and he's just a wonderful, wonderful man.
Beautiful, beautiful. I
Thank
want to
you.
tell you something interesting. Didn't mention once a year, and he's become one of the main organizers on the Shabbos that we read about the Shabbos that we read about the purchase of that Machpelah field, Chaye Sarah. Thousands of people come to Hebron, not only from Israel, but from around the world. I think not last year, before COVID, I think they had about 40,000 people spend a Shabbat in Hebron area. They put up tents, and he's one of the biggest organizers of it. It's incredible, when you think about it, to be so close to a place like this, even though today it's in the West Bank, it's in an area that it's surrounded by a city with 127,000 Arabs that we know of, many we don't know of, very fundamentalist, and that's where they have a lot of soldiers, not only to protect the 1,000 people who live in Hebron and the 8,000 in Kiryat Arba and the settlements around it, but it's to protect Israel, because if Hebron is open, Jerusalem is in danger, and that is really what they're doing there. Any other comment or question? We'd love to hear, and generally about Israel, now that Israel's in our focus today. Okay, so we thank you all so much for joining. And next Wednesday night, it's right after the Chag. We won't have, but in 2 weeks we'll resume. And we have some nice places going to be lined up, and we'll keep you informed. And we really appreciate you coming. And I want to invite everyone here to join tomorrow night. Shavuot is coming, Sunday night, and especially what's going on in Israel. The Rebbe would always encourage to get together for prayer, for Torah. Tomorrow night, we're doing 10 talks in honor of Shavuot. We're going to have 10 different people give a short Torah thought and a little bit about their Jewish journey. And we want you to come on this same link. Come, you'll enjoy it. It'll be inspiring, and it'll also be in the honor of protection, more protection for Israel, because one of the ways we can help is by becoming more spiritually active, to give strength to our soldiers on the forefront and the civilians who are living on the forefront. The strength and knowing that we're unified and we're as one and we're together, and God will hopefully will finish very soon, and we'll be able to be strong and secure. So thank you so much. Good night, everyone.
Thank you,
Really
Rabbi.
a pleasure.
What time tomorrow?
7:30. 7:30.
Okay.
7:30 p.m. Beautiful. Thank you all for joining. Great seeing you.
You can
Night.
listen tomorrow.